Is Kareem right that there hasn't been a strong enough response to anti-Semitism in sports?
All right, it is probably worth noting, because this is a little bit heartbreaking, that Muhammad Ali is dead, that Bill Russell walks hunched over, that Jim Brown walks with a cane, that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they all acted in the civil rights movement. We saw their faces involved with this. And all these years later, as our heroes are either dying, dead, or on the way to the ending, they are still out here arguing for the same things they were arguing for 60 years ago. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has become an opinion columnist who writes the right thing at the right time. And here he's talking about Deshaun Jackson and Steven Jackson and the idea of, if there is injustice for one, there is injustice for all. And of course he's right that we do not cover this well. And the history of Black and Jewish relations is complicated. You can make the argument in American history that Jews have been more supportive of Blacks than any other group, marched with them disproportionately during the civil rights movement, a part of the building of the NAACP and the Civil Rights Voting Act. These two sides know what it's like to be oppressed, and they work together. And condemnation of one side here, when there is something like anti-Semitism, is condemnation of all if you do not do it.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out, because he's absolutely right, and I've been trying to figure out why. And I think that the reason that you're not seeing as much outrage as you typically would in these situations is because we are experiencing a revolution in this country of Black empowerment, and it's a beautiful thing. But unfortunately, some of that Black empowerment is at the denigration of other people. And I think that what we're seeing is hotepping at its absolute finest, where we used to write it off as insane conspiracy theories on the internet, and now people are actually taking these things thinking they are uplifting the Black community. And people are frankly frightened to say anything that they believe would affect any of the fantastic strides that we've made collectively to empower Black people as a community.
I think he's right, but I also think this goes way beyond sports, something that's become very apparent to me over the last couple weeks, but obviously for a much longer time, is that anti-Semitism is viewed differently in this country from other forms of discrimination. That there's this perception that because these conspiracy theories, hateful ideas, stereotypes are targeting a group with more perceived power, as Elle laid out, they're somehow less dangerous. But something that's also very apparent to me from covering sports in particular and athletes is that your perceived power and privilege and standing in this country does not protect you from bigotry or discrimination. And while it's easy to brush aside some of this stuff as internet zaniness, or your uncle or your friend who's going deep into YouTube and sharing stuff on social media that he probably does not even believe, those ideas have consequences. They have clearly seeped into the public consciousness and sowed division that does manifest itself as violence. As Kareem wrote in his column, hate crimes against Jewish people are increasing in this country, and ignorance is no longer an excuse.
Yeah, hate crimes against Jewish people, violent hate crimes against Jewish people have been increasing to the point where last year is the record high in American history. The year before last year was the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, in which 11 people of Jewish faith were killed. I mean, this is all very near and dear and present tense. And Dan started this off by talking about the civil rights movement. And one of the things that I think has been useful to remember as we talk about Black empowerment is the civil rights movement isn't that long ago. Well, the end of the Holocaust is less than a decade before the beginning of the civil rights movement. There are people in this world who acutely remember what it's like to have their lives on the line, who acutely remember genocide. I mean, the shock to me is that I thought Hitler's brand was stronger in all of this. I thought anti-Semitism's brand was stronger in all of this, because for a long time it seemed the textbooks made it very clear that history's greatest monster might be that guy. And now I think we're also dealing with not only these racial complications, but the fact that the internet is eating people's brains, and that when information and the truth are more in doubt than ever, it's easier to fall into these conspiratorial Farrakhanian rabbit holes. And I know it's hard to call out, but it must be called out.